Mr. Mogi is more than happy to take some questions. We do have some time. I would ask that you stand up and identify yourself and speak so that everyone can hear the question. Is there anybody who'd like to start?
I will start off, if I may. A wonderful presentation, very impressive company. And I'm glad now I'll never forget it's a Japanese company. But I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on something you said in the very beginning of your remarks about perhaps the economic mood in Japan. I know there have been some articles recently about the relatively slow recovery from the tsunami, the combination of that with the demographic decline in Japan, and the sense that that has created a mood of pessimism in the country. So I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more on whether you think that is indeed a correct assessment, what you see that might be changing that, or your sense of the prospects for that sense of a national mood and spirit.
Yes, now we have economic problem in Japan. You know, Japanese economy hasn't grown for almost 20 years. That's a problem. As you might know, we had a bubble economy in 1980s, and then that bubble was collapsed. Then after that, since then, we haven't had any growth in economy. That's the problem. Now we are trying to, revitalize economy, and in order to revitalize economy, I believe that deregulation. We have to promote more deregulation to, stimulate economy. And Mr. Koizumi, when he was Prime Minister, he promoted deregulation. However, after he, stepped down, the effort for the deregulation was, slowed down. And after DPJ, Democratic Party of Japan, took over almost 3 years ago, at the beginning, they didn't have interest in deregulation so much. But finally, DPJ started to realize that in order to stimulate the economy, deregulation is important. So now, you see, they are eager to stimulate deregulation. So I think, if deregulation moves on, then I believe that economy will start, growing again. But another problem is the fiscal deficit, huge fiscal deficit in Japan. So if, we need to stimulate the economy, but at the same time, we have to solve the problem of fiscal deficit. So government, in order to stimulate the economy, government, has to spend money, you see. However, if they spend money, we have, so that's problem. So, so I think deregulation, without spending money, government should promote deregulation. At the same time, we have to try to solve the deficit problem. If government succeed in those, policies, then I think the Japanese economy will start growing again. I hope within, 2 or 3 years.
Alex?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mogi, for the presentation. As a company, Kikkoman is becoming more and more global. And I think it's very impressive the length they've taken the U.S. model of expanding to other countries and other regions. What what company or companies does Kikoman look to as a model to emulate of successful expansion globally? And maybe on the other side, is there a company that they would say not to try to emulate?
Well, that is a very difficult question. And, among Japanese companies, Kikoman is one of the front runner. In 1973, we built a factory in Wisconsin. In 1972, Sony and YKK, Yoshida Kogyo, built a factory in the United States. So 3 of us, you see, Sony, YKK, and Kikoman, so-called front runner among Japanese companies for international business. So I think many companies, following us, you see. We're not following, and I think at the same time, some companies, fail. Of course, some companies fail in international business. Of course, we have to, watch, why. We have to find out why they fail, and we try not to do, anything, which, they did. I don't like to mention, name of those companies, but there are some, yes.
Thanks for a great speech. My name is Koki Yamashita, and I'm a student at Willamette University.
Could you speak louder, please?
Absolutely. Thanks for the great speech. My name is Koki Yamashita from Willamette University in Salem, which is 1 hour from here. And I have questions about the Japanese younger generations. And the population is shrinking now, and the quality of the young generations human resources are really important. And what's the important quality for the Japanese young generation who are going to global market in a really near future? You should tell us those.
I think in order to be internationally successful, there are a couple of specifications. Well, first of all, I think you should become specialist, you see, in certain field, you see, in certain field, because as globalization, expand, not only competition between among companies, but also competition among people, individuals, becoming, keen. So, in order to win, in order to be winner, among your friends, I think you should be specialist in certain field. That is one thing. So so if you become, businessman, you should say you should become a specialist in accounting or marketing, sales, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. And if second specification is, I think. Stability of foreign culture is quite important because now economically, as I said, national borders become almost meaningless. So you can work anywhere. You can live anywhere in the world. So in order to work globally, you have to have adaptability to foreign culture. If you live in the United States, you have to adapt to American culture. If you live in Europe, you have to adapt yourself to European culture also. That's what I think.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mogi, about the nice lecture. Now, you mentioned about globalization of your company and businesses and everything. And I just would like to ask you a strategic plan about employment of the people from all over the world. Certainly, you have your products sold over the 100 countries all over the world. And each market has its own, niche and differences. But the thing is, strategically, you are kind of overseeing all over the world how you're going to grow the company and this and that. And are you having some system in your human resources to kind of suck up some of the people from other parts of the countries or other culture to be some sort of executive role in your company and kind of expanding toward that way? And I know some Japanese corporations such as Sony or Panasonic, they've been fairly aggressive toward that direction. And I'm wondering, how their thoughts about it.
Very good question. I think we have an operation. We are selling a product in 100 countries, as I said, and we have 7 soy sauce factories overseas, and we have also the remote business in Japan and Asia. So we have 2 factories for Del Monte products outside Japan, one in Thailand and one in China. And also we acquired 2 health food companies in US. So we have 2 health food operations in the United States. Then also, but now you see, we recruit at headquarters. We used to recruit only Japanese working at headquarters. But about 10 years ago, we started to recruit Chinese and Korean to work at our headquarters. So now at our headquarters, we have mostly Japanese people, but some Chinese and some Koreans. And also, just recently, we appointed one American as assistant to CFO. So eventually, I think in the future, we appoint some Americans or Europeans, Asians as board members, maybe, I don't know now, but we have so-called international advisory board consisting of Americans, Europeans, Asian. We are trying to recruit the non-Japanese at headquarters now. Yes.
My name is Akira. I'm a business student at Florida State University. I have a couple questions about your quality control. As you mentioned, quality is one of the key points that why Kikkoman is so successful. But Kikkoman is an international company, so you have factories all over the world. How do you do quality control, and what kind of difficulties do you face, and how do you solve those kind of problems? Second, what % of your sales is outside Japan, and I wonder what country is your main focus market outside Japan?
As to the quality control, we have the department called Quality Assurance Department in our headquarters. And each factory, not only in Japan but also in other countries, we have quality control department. Each factory in at each country in foreign countries, we send manager for quality control from Japan. Because, in Japan, as you might know, there are a lot of universities which have department for soy sauce. I mean, department which soy sauce is on the subject. So it's possible for us to recruit in Japan college graduate or graduate school graduate who specialize in soy sauce brewing. But in the United States or in Europe, unfortunately, there are no university which have department, teaching this. Soy sauce brewing. Maybe you might start. So very difficult to recruit manager in charge of quality control abroad. So we send people from Japan to the factory overseas. And we send manager in charge of quality control factory, overseas factory. And your second question is about the sales percentage.
Sales
outside. As I said, international sales account for more than 40% of the total consolidated sales. And out of that, 80% from the United States. 80%. However, sales in Europe growing at double digits. So I think European sales catching up now.
My name is Marcia Tabe, and one of your global vision is to be a company that's meaningful to the world society. And I know establishing plants and hiring local people, certainly it's very meaningful. But do you do anything else to attain to be a meaningful member of the world's global society?
Yes, to be good corporate citizen, anywhere in the world is a, policy. And to be good corporate citizen, as you said, we are trying to do business with local companies, and also we try to recruit and promote local people, so on and so forth. So at the same time, we are trying to contribute something to local community. For instance, when in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, you ran Rembrandt House, that house where the Rembrandt was born, maybe lived, used to live. Was rebuilt. We donated some money to Rembrandt House. Also, some University of Wisconsin in the United States, when they built building for biotechnology. We donated some money to them, so on and so forth. And also, some high school, sometimes, some elementary school, or some charity organization in Wisconsin, for instance, in California, asked us to donate some money to them. We kind of organization called Kikuan Food Foundation in Wisconsin. And that foundation, board member of that foundation discussed whether we should. And if decision is made, then we donate. Those kind of things.
Thank you.
I'm exclusively giving again. My question is, some companies have very strong corporate culture enforcement as opposed to more localized. How does Kikkoman approach that separation, fine line separation between corporate culture from headquarters and local factories and companies in different countries?
Well, we try to have, same culture, basic culture, basic corporate culture is same. But of course, we have to adapt ourselves to, local community. So each, factories, for instance, have same basic culture, like as the headquarters. At the same time, each plant has its own local culture. And basic culture of Kikkoman is that, as I said, try to be good corporate citizen, and try to be meaningful in the society where we live. That is a big, basic culture. So this basic culture is, common all over the world.
Somewhere along the way, it became customary for the director of the Center for Japanese Studies to make some very short concluding remarks. And I just want to thank Mr. Mogi again for a remarkable lecture. This business lecture series that we started about 3 years ago has been more interesting, more popular, and more successful than we ever could have imagined when we started it. And I suspect we're going to be continuing it for many years to come. And in fact, some of the previous speakers in that series are here today. In reference to Mr. Mogi's talk, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to replicate such a talk that's so interweaved history with business strategy. I just don't know if we can ever do something like that again, because very few companies have the remarkable history of Kikkoman. What a fantastic story. And just in conclusion, I want to point out that Mark Fruin, in this book on Kikkoman, has a translation of the Mogi family constitution, okay? Dating back to, I think it was the 18th century. And if you read that, you will not be surprised that it was Kikkoman that was the first Japanese company to subscribe to United Nations ethical business practices, because that family constitution lays out some very, very strict ethics. And in fact, I'm thinking of making a copy of it and posting it on the refrigerator at home. So when the kids reach for the Kikkoman soy sauce, perhaps they'll be recommended about some guiding ethical principles on life. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk.